You ever hear the one about the vampire who bit the wrong girl and ended up human? Yeah, that's not a joke. It's the start of our story. Welcome to Romance and Hijinks, where we mix romance, chaos, and just a touch of magic. This is part 1 of How to Accidentally Human, where the trouble begins. The air in Realm 7A always smelled faintly of warm concrete, car exhaust, and overprocessed meat. Not exactly poetic, but Darius rather liked it. It was vivid, mortal, tangy with grit and hope. And tonight, it reeked of potential. He stepped from the shadows of the alley across from the sprawling glass and steel rectangle labeled Everseer Pharmaceutical Research, pausing to brush imaginary lint from his lapel. The coat was calfskin, dyed a brooding shade called Twilight in some boutique pocket of Paris. Mortals adored drama, and he made it a point to oblige. You've done it, Darius. Unregistered portal, past the bureau, clean sweep, third realm hop at this quarter, and tonight you ascend. He adjusted the collar of his coat and smiled faintly at the clouded moon. His fangs, perfectly sculpted and magically whitened, gleamed. Tonight, I will make my first fledgling. Not just anyone, of course. He'd had standards long before becoming a vampire. No, Mira Williams was exquisite, ridiculously intelligent, magically potent, and utterly unaware that she was being hunted. He glanced at the glowing digital clock above the nearby corner bodega. 8:43 p.m. She'd be exiting the lab any moment now, probably muttering to herself about data corruption or corporate inefficiency. She was charming that way, focused, sharp, as precise as a scalpel, yet as soft-eyed as a watercolor fox. He leaned against a street lamp, hands in his pockets. He didn't lurk. Lurking was for creepers. He smoldered. Right on cue, the automatic doors hissed open. Mira emerged, a coffee-stained canvas bag slung over one shoulder, phone in hand, brows knitted in concentration. There she is, my brilliant little moonflower. She didn't see him at first. Her attention was half on her phone, half on the sidewalk, typical of mortals who falsely believe themselves safe in routine. He began to walk. Casually, as if he just happened to be heading in the same direction. She turned the corner. He followed. She didn't speed up. That was promising. Excellent. She's calm. This is it. This is the moment I charm her, enthrall her, and... Okay, she said aloud, not looking back. Nope. Pardon? You've been following me for the last 3 blocks. She stopped suddenly and turned. Her dark eyes locked on him like scalpels. Do you need something, Dracula? Oh, so she had noticed. Bold? That's fine. This can still be salvaged. Darius cleared his throat, adopting his most charming smile. Apologies. I didn't mean to alarm you. I merely noticed you were walking alone and thought... You're doing that smoldery, I'm totally not gonna kill you thing, and I'm not into stalkers. Not going as planned. Adjust. You're still devastatingly handsome. Use it. You are Mira Williams, are you not? I've seen you before. You stand out. Congratulations! You can read my ID badge. Want a medal or something? The swirl of mind magic hit her and slid off like a duck shaking off water. No daze, no flush, no fluttering pulse. Darius frowned. That's odd. She's not resisting. She's just unaffected. Right. You're a lunatic, Mira declared, already turning away. In one fluid motion, he stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Wait! Buddy, she said, holding her phone. I have pepper spray, a taser, and a coworker who once took down a guy twice your size with a thermos. You do not want to test me tonight." Darius hesitated. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She should be swooning by now, softening. Her thoughts should be melting like cream. "You are Darius of House Vranos, scourge of the Velvet Age, charmer of 6 realms. You are not." "Screw it," he muttered. "What?" And before she could move again, he grabbed her gently, too gently to bruise, but firmly enough to hold her still, and lowered his mouth to her neck. "Let it be done. One bite, the rest will follow. Welcome to the immortal night, Mira." His fangs sunk in. He tasted her delightful blood. And then the world shattered. Hot lightning tore through his spine. His knees buckled. He let go of Mira and stumbled backwards, gripping his chest. His chest? What was this? This thumping? Thump, thump, thump. "What the hell?" he gasped. His voice cracked. "Oh my God," Mira said, wide-eyed. She touched her neck, looked at the smear of blood, then back at him. "Did you actually bite me?" I... He tried to answer, but his mouth felt like cotton and regret. He reached for her again and tripped. Tripped. He hit the ground with a very mortal-sounding oof. "No, no, no, no! This isn't right! Where's the thrall? Where's the floaty grace? Why am I dizzy, sweaty?" A car honked nearby and he flinched. "Why do I have a heartbeat?" "You're not even drunk, are you?" Mira said, backing away. "You're just crazy." He rolled onto his back, staring at the stars above the city. Stars. So bright. So many. "Oh, great blood mother, I'm mortal. I bit her, and I became mortal." His hand found his chest, and he felt it. The steady thrum of a human heart, clumsy and alive. "This is it. This is how I die. On a sidewalk in Atlanta, wearing twilight-dyed calfskin because I tried to impress a girl with science blood. Oh gods, I'm hideous." "Yeah, that's not the problem here," Mira said, voice flat. And he tried to rise again, but was suddenly hit by something that smelled peppery and burned his eyes. An unholy, undignified sound that echoed off the brick walls and made a nearby stray cat bolt. He dropped like a sack of drama onto the sidewalk, clutching his face and writhing like she'd hit him with holy water instead of off-brand mace. Mira decided she should have taken the hint when the streetlight above her had flickered just as she stepped out of the lab. But she was tired. Her back ached, her brain felt like pudding, and her only thought was leftovers and bed. What she didn't expect was Mr. Tall, Dark, and Dripping Melodrama to come sashaying out of the alley like he was auditioning for the cover of Brooding Goth Quarterly. The guy was still wheezing. Curled on his side on the sidewalk like a Renaissance fair model who took a wrong turn, the dark-haired lunatic clutched his face as if the pepper spray had personally betrayed him. Mira backed up a few paces, scarf looped tight in her hand. What the hell had just happened? 30 seconds ago, she'd been walking to her car with a phone in one hand and a tote full of lab notes in the other. Then, Captain Dracula here popped out from behind the recycling bins, smoldering, sure, but very much acting like a maniac, and bit her. "My eyes!" he gasped. "What is this vile human concoction? I am burning!" "You're lucky I didn't go for the taser," Mira huffed, planting a foot beside his squirming body. "Who the hell are you?" "I am Darius Kelsey of the House of Vrenos, third bloodline of the Inner Court, noble Duke of Shalal, and..." "Right. So you're insane. Got it." She yanked her scarf from around her neck, soft burgundy alpaca, hand-knit during last year's blizzard, and wrapped it around his flailing arms, cinching tight. He barely resisted, still whining about mortality and sting of humanity. "Gah! What did you do to me? He gasped, his accent veering somewhere between posh British and, cosplay convention. My fangs! They're gone! Okay, she definitely tagged him in the face. But this guy, he sounded like he truly believed that. Are you on something? Mira asked warily, taking another step back. Or just doing a really committed TikTok prank? He squinted up at her through reddened eyes. You think this is a prank? I crossed 3 border veils to be here. I've studied your movements for weeks. Okay, nope. Mira flipped open her phone with one hand while wrapping the scarf tighter with the other. He didn't resist, probably too blinded to fight back. Still, it felt weirdly easy, like she was subduing an exhausted cat. That's a solid lifetime ban from all my social media. Okay, deep breath. This is just a very committed cosplayer with excellent hair and disturbingly good cheekbones, and possibly a concussion, or drugs, or both. Should I feel bad about the pepper spray? No, he stalked me in full theatrical monologue mode. Who does that? You can't do this, he muttered, squinting into the dark. This is illegal and undignified. Oh, I can't do this? She snapped, flipping the scarf over into a very passable restraint knot. You just bit me, in public, with dialogue like a fanfiction villain. I am a villain. I mean, a vampire, he cried. Right, Mira jabbed 911 with her thumb. And I'm the Queen of Atlantis. He sniffled. Are you? Is that still a thing? Oh, gods. He sounded genuinely confused. Mira looked him over again. The fancy black jacket, the open shirt, the dramatic leather boots, the faint aura of something she couldn't define. Okay, yeah, certified. And why? She asked, watching him try and fail to sit up. Did you say your teeth were missing? You allergic to pepper spray or something? They were fangs, he hissed. Do you think I would have chosen to accost a mortal this way if I knew it would render me human? You're saying I made you human? She repeated slowly. Clearly, you're some kind of latent potent, he growled, face buried in the crook of his arm. You reversed the transference. Mira stared. Her brain was buffering. Buddy, you're saying I accidentally turned you into a human with pepper spray and what? He groaned. With your blood, or your soul, or your proximity. I don't know. I need a nap. Mira blinked. Oh my god. You're like a LARP version of a baked potato. He slumped back on the pavement, bound wrists raised with theatrical defeat. Tell the enforcers I demand representation and a room with blackout curtains. Mira stood over him for a moment, looking at his ridiculous pout, his hair that somehow still looked shampoo commercial perfect, the way he was muttering something about realm violations. She pressed the emergency call through. The dispatcher picked up. Yes, hi. I've got a guy about 3 blocks outside the Everseer building. He might be, I don't know, hallucinating? He says he's a vampire. He's ranting about... Wait, are you okay down there? I am betrayed by fate. How can this be? I was meant to rise with my first fledgling, not descend into this weak, mortal meat suit. Can you not yell meat suit while I'm on the phone with emergency services? I need blood, or at least ibuprofen. I swear to God, if you barf on my scarf, I shall perish with dignity, he sniffed, slumping dramatically onto his side like he was posing for a gothic romance cover. Mira turned back to the dispatcher. Yeah, he's conscious and surprisingly flexible. Definitely needs help. She returned her attention to the dispatcher on the phone. "I'd like to report an assault." "No, I'm okay. But the guy might be on something, possibly delusional." The dispatcher asked for details. Mira looked at the man tied up on the sidewalk, whining about how this mortal air was itchy, and sighed. "Yeah, weird night." She folded her arms, glancing down at him. "Who are you, really?" she asked, softer this time, looking down at where he sat on the sidewalk. Darius cracked one red, watery eye open. "A duke. Or I was, before you did whatever that was." "Pepper spray?" He whimpered. "Yeah, you're not exactly the apex predator you think you are." His lip curled. "You will rue this moment when I regain my strength." Mira rolled her eyes. "Save the threats, Edward. You're hogtied with yarn." And as the flashing neon lights bounced off the nearby buildings, she couldn't help but think, God, he's hot. And probably actually dangerous. Why are the hot ones always insane? Darius lay on the concrete, blinking up at the hazy halo of a street lamp, tasting the metallic sting of pepper spray in the back of his throat. His eyes still burned. His wrists, how humiliating, were bound with what he was fairly certain was a hand-knitted scarf. It smelled faintly of lavender. This is not how this was supposed to go. I was going to enthrall her, charm her, bite her delicate throat with elegance and the practiced finesse of a centuries-old bloodlord. Instead, I've been maced by a mortal in sneakers. And now I'm tied up with... Is that yarn? Oh, by the blood mother. My mother's going to sense this and die again from shame. I cannot believe this, he muttered, flopping his head against the pavement. I want the record to show that this is absolutely not protocol for handling a dignified vampire encounter. Mira, standing over him, with her phone pressed to her ear, gave him a look like one might offer a raccoon caught trying to hotwire a Prius. "You tackled me. In full costume. And ist. It was a flourish, Darius cried, his voice hoarse. You ruined the moment. The seduction, the elegance, the turning. And now I'm mortal. Mira stepped a little farther away. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're not okay. Cops are 7 minutes out. You've got that long to make peace with whatever LARP storyline you're committed to. This mortal, Mira, is far more vexing than I anticipated. Her magic burns like wildfire, but she doesn't even seem to notice it. And she has no respect for the vampire arts, or dignity, or dramatic flair. Darius flopped again. You are being very unfair. They will dissect me when they find out what I am, or what I was. I'm not human. I'm just having a mortal episode. This is bad. Worse than the time I accidentally insulted the Blood Duchess's cape ensemble. I have to disappear before these city enforcers arrive. If word gets out to the court that I failed my ascension bite and became human, I'll be the punchline of undead brunches for eternity. Mira pinched the bridge of her nose. Is this a social media prank? Am I getting filmed right now? Are you going to ask me if I've heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise next? Darius tried to sit up. The scarf held. Unhand me! You are delaying a very important interdimensional diplomatic process. Yep, that's what they all say, she replied, clearly unimpressed. Darius squinted up at the sky, searching for the familiar rustle of wings. Bastion, he hissed. Where are you, you feathery traitor? No owl, no magic, no dignity. He could feel the humanity in his bones now. Awkward, unglamorous, slightly sweaty. It itched. He wriggled like a worm in a velvet coat. Okay, fine. No owl backup, No vampire blood magic to save him. He'd have to do this the embarrassing way. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Darius rolled, awkwardly, like a sausage escaping a countertop, managing to get to his knees. Mira yelped, "Oh, no, you don't, Nosferatu!" But Darius, possessed by the desperate shame of a man who might be recognized by his own peers as the vampire who was pepper-sprayed and scarf-tied by a mortal, yanked hard. The scarf strained, the wool fibers groaned, and with a final twist, he broke free. "Victory!" he cried, bolting into the night. "You jerk!" Mira's voice echoed after him. "Tell your strange gods that you tied me poorly, foul temptress!" he called over his shoulder, already wheezing from the effort. 15 minutes later, he was lost. His velvet coat had caught on a chain-link fence and now had a new rip. His boots were making his feet ache, and humans, as it turned out, sweat a lot. How did they live like this? He staggered down another unfamiliar street, the neon lights of a laundromat buzzing overhead, casting sickly green shadows across the cracked pavement. His eyes were still watering from the pepper spray, and somewhere between a strip mall and a vape shop, he collapsed beside a trash bin with all the grace of a fainting goat. "I will perish here," he whispered hoarsely, "and be buried and forsaken by moonlight." Dude, your cosplay is amazing. Your commitment is like next level. He blinked up. A young woman stood nearby, clutching a bag of takeout. Behind her were two other people, one with fangs on a lanyard, the other wearing a cloak that was clearly synthetic. All three of them stared at him like he was a unicorn that had wandered into rush hour traffic. "Who are you?" "We're from Bloodline Requiem, ATL. You're with the immersive LARB crew, right?" "Oh my god, that breakaway run? You just sprinted past us muttering about being forsaken by moonlight. It was art." "Are you okay?" the guy in the cloak asked. "Dude, are you in character right now?" Darius licked his dry lips. "I am a thespian of some renown." The Fang Lanyard girl gasped. "Oh my god, are you part of the Atlanta Coven Society?" Darius blinked. His mind, foggy with human hormones and crushed dignity, latched on to the only word that mattered. Coven. Yes, that. I am of it. "Holy crap, he's so committed," said the cloak guy. "He's like fully role-playing breakdown. What a legend." "I've never seen a method vampire before," whispered the takeout girl. "You staying for the overnight? We're doing Feast of the Undying Heartbreakers at Taylor's Place. We got props, vegan blood pudding, sleeping bags," said the cloak guy. Darius swayed to his feet, barely. "Yes, I shall join your coven of nocturnal tribute. I require sanctuary." The fangirl all but squealed. "You can totally crash at our place. Oh my god, Greg is going to die. We have a blood chalice-shaped lava lamp and everything." Darius grinned weakly. "Lead on, fellow creatures of the night." As they led him down the sidewalk, peppered with questions about his clan and lore choices, Darius allowed himself the smallest sigh of relief. Mira could wait. Bastion would find him, and in the meantime, he would rest in the den of his oddly enthusiastic worshippers. This is not a proper vampire court. There's glitter, but there's no bureau, no Mira. And best of all, no one here realizes I'm actually vampire turned human. Perhaps the blood goddess has not forsaken me entirely. He smiled, slipping into the shadows with his adoring mortal entourage. "Bastion, wherever you are, find me soon. Bring snacks, and maybe a map." Mira stood on the curb with the light of some building's back entrance flickering dimly behind her, one hand gingerly pressing a crumpled napkin against her neck. She stared in the direction Darius had vanished, or rather, staggered and then sprinted like a Victorian ghost into the Atlanta night. Of course he ran, she muttered to no one, the sirens in the distance growing louder. Dramatic menace. Her scarf, her favorite one, hand-knitted, still fluttered weakly on the ground where he'd somehow Houdini'd out of it. One frayed end had gotten caught on the heel of his boot as he flailed away into the shadows like a panicked deer with a flair for drama. And now she was the idiot who had to explain this to Atlanta PD. A pair of headlights swung around the corner and a black and white patrol car slowed to a stop in front of the scene. She straightened as two officers stepped out, one of them already scribbling something on a notepad. "Ma'am," the younger one said, approaching her cautiously, "we got a call from dispatch. You reported a possible assault?" Mira sighed. "Here we go." "Yes," she said. "A man bit me." The officer blinked, looking briefly at his partner. "Like, with his teeth?" "Exactly like that." She gestured toward the alley where the whole absurd ordeal had unfolded. Her voice was calm, but her words came out clipped, like she was describing a technical glitch rather than a near assault by a deranged vampire cosplayer. Both officers paused. "Go ahead, ma'am," the older one said, notepad ready. There was this guy. Tall, gorgeous, obviously delusional, mid-20s tall, pale as hell, dressed like he fell out of a Ren Fair catalog. Definitely not okay in the head. Told me he was a vampire, like not in a I sparkle in the sun kind of way, more like a I've lived for centuries and now I'm terribly inconvenienced by being human kind of way. Honestly, I think he might have escaped from one of those weird vampire LARP meetups. The officer's pen paused. "You said he bit you." She nodded and let out a shaky breath. "He was following me, and when I turned around to confront him," Mira tilted her head, revealing the puncture marks. "Dispatch said to get it checked out for documentation, so I'm heading to the ER after this. I'd love to be home eating reheated pad thai right now instead, believe me. I pepper sprayed him, a reflex. Then I tied him up with my scarf because I didn't have handcuffs or, I don't know, zip ties? Who carries zip ties?" The older officer was already taking photos of the wound with his phone. Mira suppressed a grimace. The whole experience was surreal enough. Now she'd be part of a case file labeled something like "Weird Vampire Guy Incident." The younger officer blinked. "He said he was a vampire." "With conviction," Mira said, dragging her hand through her curls. "And then he complained, loudly, about how rude I was, and that being pepper sprayed was beneath him. And then he somehow escaped like some kind of extremely dramatic contortionist." "Did you know this man?" the younger cop asked. Mira hesitated. Technically, yes, he had introduced himself, but something about giving his name to the police felt wrong, like betraying some weird bloodless truce. She thought about how he'd looked when he ran, confused, hurt, and utterly overwhelmed. Not the behavior of someone predatory. Deranged, sure, but not evil. And not someone she wanted locked up for being too theatrical in public. "Still," she said, finally, tired. "Yes, he told me his name. Darius Kelsey." The officer nodded and scribbled it down. "Can you describe his appearance?" Mira hesitated. Well, he had this ridiculous black cloak, like Dracula by way of Milan Fashion Week, long dark hair, blue eyes, kind of intense, very tall, pretty, like stupid pretty, like if Sephiroth had an Instagram. The officers blinked at her. "Okay," she sighed. "That probably didn't help." The older officer nodded slowly and scribbled something. "We'll keep an eye out. If you see him again, don't approach him alone." "Oh, don't worry," Mira said. "If I ever see him again, I'm bringing a taser. Or a priest." As they wrapped up the questioning, Mira rubbed her temple, feeling the dull ache of the day crash down on her. "You think I'll need a tetanus shot for a fake vampire bite?" she asked, more to lighten the mood than anything. The younger cop chuckled. "ER'll let you know. They'll take blood work, swab for DNA, clean the area, standard stuff." "Awesome," she said flatly. "What a perfect Thursday." The officers moved off to speak into their radios, and Mira sank down onto the stoop of a nearby storefront. Her heart had finally stopped trying to break the land speed record, but her mind was still spinning. The weirdest part? She'd been startled, sure, but she hadn't really felt afraid. Not the way she should have. That man, Darius, was unhinged, probably dangerous, possibly high. And yet, there was something in his eyes, something tired, something lonely. God, he's going to haunt me, isn't he? She looked down at the frayed scarf in her hands, fingers brushing its unraveling edge. Ronnie is never going to let me live this down. She pulled out her phone again, scrolling through her contacts to text her best friend. "You are not going to believe the night I've had. Spoiler alert, my scarf did not survive." A pause. Then, almost involuntarily, her thoughts drifted to Darius again. His completely straight-faced, "You're being very unfair. They will dissect me when they find out what I am. Or what I was. I'm not human. I'm just having a mortal episode" moment. His disbelief at his own human heartbeat. The way he'd blinked furiously when the pepper spray hit his eyes like a betrayed cat. She huffed a soft laugh. "If I ever see him again, I'm getting answers. But first, ER, then leftovers." I was starving. The scent of cheap, instant ramen clung to the air like a lazy fog. Darius shifted on the lumpy, aged sofa, one foot dangling off the side, the other tangled in an Afghan blanket that smelled vaguely of dog. He muttered something intelligible and turned over, face squishing into the throw pillow decorated with little bats that read #TeamEdward. Crash! Darius jerked upright, eyes wide, trying to slide his fangs, instinctively clicking into place, before realizing he no longer had them. In the doorway of the living room stood a man, wearing a long trench coat that appeared to be made entirely of shimmering parchment. His hair was midnight black, sleek and perfect, and he was already holding a clipboard in one hand and a glowing quill in the other. "You have got to be kidding me." Darius's voice came out cracked and hoarse. "I haven't even had my nightly tea." "Agent Izar, the Loomway," the figure said crisply, striding in with the authority of a man who audited archdemons for fun. "Department of Interdimensional Stabilization and Ritual Compliance, Realm Border Affairs. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Darius blinked. "Broken my spine on this couch?" Izar dropped a manila folder thick enough to concuss a troll onto the coffee table. "Unauthorized realm-to-realm traversal, unauthorized anthropomorphic transmutation without Form 7A-11, possible disruption to border magic stability, not to mention the lack of paperwork is atrocious. Do you even know how long the magic signature lingered?" It might have been Darius's imagination, but he thought maybe it looked a bit like Agent Izar was actually enjoying this. Darius rubbed the heel of his palm into his eye. "I wasn't trying to destabilize anything. I was trying to..." He hesitated. "Turn a human from realm 7A into a vampire." Izar's face scrunched as if Darius had said he'd tried to romance a ferret. "That's a level 3 infraction in 3 out of 7 harmonized dimensions. Darius groaned and fell back onto the couch, arm over his face. I didn't mean for it to turn out like this. It was supposed to be a clean transmutation. 2 bites. Charming smile. Boom. Happy new immortal. Izar's eyes narrowed before he raised a brow. Don't you mean happy new mortal? Darius winced. She pepper sprayed me and then hog-kied me with a scarf. Now he was positive the other was enjoying this. Izar let out the kind of side bureaucrats reserve for paperwork involving glitter or sapient goats. You are one walking existential liability. Do you know what happens if that magical residue leaches into this realm's perimeter warding? Realm 7A's barriers thin. Creatures slip through. Your little star-crossed midlife romance becomes a geopolitical catastrophe. Darius sat up, hair askew, expression halfway between apologetic and exhausted. I get it, okay? I messed up. He trailed off, lips pressing together. I didn't think I'd like her that much. Izar paused. For a moment, the mystical bureaucrat studied him. Then, with a sneer that implied Darius was an amateur or an idiot, he snapped the quill in half and summoned a new one midair. Regardless, you're still responsible for... He paused again, tapping the side of his head. Wait, you gave her your real name? Darius shrugged helplessly. It seemed appropriate. Oh, brilliant. Now it's a traceable contamination. I'm adding 3 demerits. You can't demerit me, Darius snapped. I'm not even on your payroll. You're under open case review, Izar said flatly. Congratulations, you've qualified for an emergency Loomway audit. You'll be receiving formal charges. Expect a courier crow. Before Darius could protest, a stack of bright pink forms labeled Temporary Mortal Exposure to Forbidden Thaumaturgy fluttered into his lap. And your grace. Yes. Izar's eyes gleamed. I suggest you find a way to get home before a godmother is assigned. With a flick of his wrist and a hiss of paper tearing through space, Izar stepped through an arched portal that shimmered into existence with a blur of bureaucratic sparkles, leaving the apartment faintly smelling of ozone and red tape. Darius stared at the empty doorway, face pale. This is why I hate red tape. He leaned back against the couch, defeated, form still clutched in his lap. His stomach twisted, not with fear, not even with dread. It was something else entirely. That stubborn tug at the center of his chest. Mira. He buried his face in the pillow. What am I even doing? His auntie Araminta was going to kill him. His rival, Lord Veyric, was going to gloat for decades. And the court? They'd probably strip his title and exile him to the goblin wards, all for a woman who tied him up with a scarf and accused him of cosplay. And yet, he grinned despite himself. She didn't scream. The apartment was quiet, save for the rhythmic hum of the ancient refrigerator and the occasional creak of Taylor's over-decorated bookshelves settling in the night. Darius sat hunched on the couch, legs pulled under him like a sulking teenager, staring at his reflection in the darkened TV screen. No fangs, still. His face, his human face, looked back at him, too pink, too warm, entirely too alive. The collar of Taylor's borrowed hoodie sagged around his neck. One of the sleeves had a bedazzled bat on it, and he was fairly certain he smelled like vanilla pumpkin lotion from the guest towels in the bathroom. This is a travesty, he whispered. He'd tried sleeping again. The nightmares had other plans. Agent Izar's visit had left him wide awake and drowning in bureaucratic existentialism. Unauthorized transdimensional traversal, violation of Realm 7A's interdiction clause, paperwork. There were carbon copies still stuck to the soles of his socks. But it was the thought of blood that haunted him. Mira's blood. It shouldn't have done this. Blood was blood. Sanguine, yes, occasionally spicy with a dash of courage or despair, but it didn't rewrite reality, not unless it was old magic. He ran a hand through his hair and muttered, "What in the 1,000-shadowed kingdoms of Knoxvale are you, Mira Williams?" His stomach grumbled, loudly. Offended, he looked down at it. "This is ridiculous. You want food now? You didn't even exist last week." He stood up and paced across the living room, dodging a plastic Dracula bust and a framed oil painting of some actor from a 1970s vampire flick. He paused beneath the dreamcatcher strung with faux fangs. He needed help. Real help. He needed... "Sebastian!" There was a thump on the window. "Not now," he hissed. "I'm having a spiraling identity crisis." The owl, white, fluffy, and massively disgruntled, landed on the fire escape with all the subtlety of a bowling ball. He knocked twice with his beak like a furious little postman. Darius opened the window, and Bastian fluffed up indignantly before hopping inside. He waddled straight to the coffee table and perched on an unopened six-pack of diet soda. "You look like a human with a midlife crisis." "I feel like a human with a midlife crisis," he muttered. "Bastian, I'm losing it. Everything's wrong. I'm human. I'm hungry in ways I don't even understand. And a Loomway agent showed up and ruined my already ruined night with a realm audit." "Oh, good. So things are right on track. Any other disasters you'd like to report, or should I go fetch Lady Araminta now?" Darius glared at him. "Yes, fetch her immediately. She'll know what to do." Sebastian clicked his beak. "Of course, I live to serve, just like old times. Only now you smell like toasted cinnamon and despair." "You always get sarcastic when you're upset." "I'm always sarcastic. You're just noticing it now because you don't have vampire senses. And for the record, this," he gestured vaguely at Darius with one wing, "is entirely your fault." He flew off into the pre-dawn light, trailing a feather behind like a tiny, judgmental ghost. Darius groaned and let his head drop against the couch. This was fine. It was all going to be fine. He just needed Mira. Her blood had done something. It had changed him in a way that no mortal blood should. That meant she might be able to change him back. Maybe she was enchanted. Maybe she was cursed. Either way, she was the key to fixing all of this. He'd offer her tea, or fine wine, or an apology wrapped in silver and shame. He'd woo her, with every ounce of charm the centuries had taught him, if she didn't stake him on sight. His hand fell over the crumpled stack of forms Izar had dumped on the floor. Darius sighed. Operation Woo the Mortal begins at dawn. He curled up again on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of mortal life around him. This was not how he'd imagined his glorious return to the realms of the living. The smell of industrial-strength coffee and disinfectant clung to the air as Mira hunched over her workstation in the fluorescence-lit bowels of the Everseer Pharmaceutical Research Laboratories. A pipette in one hand and a mostly cold oat milk latte in the other, she was 2 samples and a caffeine boost away from convincing herself that last night had been a particularly vivid fever dream. Her lab coat sleeve brushed against the keyboard as she logged another data point. Sample X173. Human blood with anomalous binding activity. She stared at the screen. Sample X173 was hers. With a slow blink, Mira reached for the coffee. Maybe it was time to accept that something weird had happened. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from the front desk security. "You have a visitor. Name, Darius Kelsey. Says it's important." Mira sighed hard, her bangs lifted. "Of course." "Something wrong?" Ronnie Singh asked from the adjoining bench, pausing mid-slice on a gel image. She didn't look up, but her tone was laced with suspicion. "Please tell me it's not the cosplay guy again." Mira stood and smoothed her coat. "It's the cosplay guy." Ronnie finally looked up, grimacing. Mira, no, he screams brooding cult leader, the kind who leaves red wine rings on mahogany furniture and talks about soul connections during thunderstorms. He's not that bad, Mira muttered, heading for the door. He's more lost vampire with a budget problem. Those are worse, Ronnie called after her. They think brooding is a career path. Darius was waiting near the elevators, hands behind his back, doing his very best impression of a Renaissance statue. Mira had to admit he wore discomfort well. His black, bat-themed hoodie looked slightly rumpled. His long hair had that intentional tousled look that screamed effort. And he was clearly pretending not to stare at the fluorescent ceiling like it personally offended him. She stepped into view, arms crossed. Shouldn't you be sleeping in a basement somewhere? Darius turned, offering a smile that tried for roguish and landed closer to over-caffeinated intern on his first day. Mira, you look extraordinarily competent this morning. Mira narrowed her eyes. Flattery before 9 a.m., you must be desperate. I am, he said brightly, but mostly for science. Science, she echoed, already regretting this conversation. Yes, he said, following her toward the restricted lab wing like a very large duckling in expensive boots. I've come to assist. You see, I've been doing some thinking about your blood, about me. And, well, I have a hypothesis. Mira swiped her badge and led them through the secure door. Does your hypothesis involve actually telling me the truth this time? He hesitated. Mostly. Mira gave him a sidelong glance. Try again? Fine, he said, sighing like a man admitting to sneaking cookies before dinner. I was, until recently, a vampire. A real one. With the blood-drinking, night-stalking immortality package. And then something happened. Something involving you. They stopped outside her lab. Mira turned to face him. You think my blood did this to you? I think your blood might have reacted with something, or it has a dormant resonance. Or maybe, I don't know exactly. I've heard a lot of pickup lines. That one's at least original, she said, pushing the lab door open. Inside, the lab was mostly empty, save for Ronnie, who looked up from her bench as Darius entered behind Mira. Her eyes narrowed, taking in his awkward posture and too earnest expression. Oh, good, Ronnie said flatly. The dramatic metaphor came to life. Pleasure to meet you, Darius said, giving a half bow that somehow involved knocking into a stool. Is he staying? Ronnie asked Mira, ignoring him entirely. Temporarily, Mira replied. He says he wants to help. With science? Ronnie Dan-panned. Does he know how pipettes work? I have many skills, Darius offered helpfully, though admittedly most are better suited for tomb raiding or masquerade balls. Perfect, Ronnie said. We'll call you when we need to solve a curse or infiltrate a goth prom. Mira smothered a laugh as she slipped on fresh gloves. She pulled up the earlier sample data on the monitor and pointed. If you're serious, then you sit here and try not to touch anything glass. If you so much as sneeze on my centrifuge, I will sedate you. Darius settled onto the stool like it might bite him. Understood. I am at your service. Do you want a blood sample? Hair? Saliva? I could probably cry if we waited long enough. Mira rolled her eyes, but was already reaching for a collection kit. She couldn't believe she was doing this. And yet, there was something odd about her blood, and something very odd about him. Internally, Mira was already cataloging the next steps. New assays, comparative sequencing, probably a consultation with someone in metagenetics. But somewhere deeper, beneath the science and sarcasm, was a quiet thrum of curiosity. What if he was telling the truth? What if I really had transformed a vampire into a human? I'm not saying you believe me, she said, prepping the butterfly needle. But I'm curious. Darius smiled, a little softer this time. That's all I'm asking for. From her bench, Ronnie muttered, "This is how horror movies start." Mira ignored her. "Hold still. If you faint, I'm putting it in your official record." "Wouldn't be the worst thing," Darius said. "My last official record includes illegal dimensional trespassing and a strongly worded memo from the Loomway Bureau." Mira blinked. "What?" "Nothing," Darius said quickly. "Let's just stick to the blood today." As she drew the sample, Mira studied his expression. The quiet tension behind the humor, the way his eyes followed the vial like it held answers. She wasn't ready to trust him, but she was ready to know more. And that's a start. It was the butter that betrayed him first. The golden slice of toast, perfectly perched atop the plate, taunted him with its smug crunch. Darius had watched several YouTube tutorials. How to use a toaster without ruining breakfast, and was feeling confident. He'd even managed to not burn this one. But the butter was an enigma. Too solid. Why did humans keep their dairy products in Arctic conditions? He tried to spread it, gently, he thought, and the whole toast snapped in half with a dry crunch. Darius stared down at the ruined breakfast. "You insolent slab of carbohydrate," he muttered. From across the kitchen, Taylor peered over his oversized novelty mug with #1 Goth Dad scrawled in black glitter font. "That's your third piece of toast this morning, mate. You all right?" "No," Darius said solemnly. "I believe I'm perishing." Taylor chuckled and turned the page of his dog-eared vampire lore compendium. "Still not adjusting to being mortal, huh?" Darius let the broken toast clatter to the counter, sighing in the dramatic way he used to when stepping into moonlight after a good hunt. "My skin itches. My teeth feel blunt. I sneezed earlier. It was undignified." He did sneeze. Twice. In a flower shot, no less. Mira had sent him on a, quote, simple errand. Buy soil samples and a fresh bundle of lavender. He had been attacked by a cloud of pollen instead, which resulted in a sneezing fit so violent he knocked over an entire display of succulents. The florist had offered him tea. Pitying tea. In Mira's lab, it wasn't much better. "Please don't touch the—" Mira began. Too late. Shatter. A beaker lay in pieces on the floor, and Darius blinked down at it like it had betrayed him personally. Mira gave him a deadpan look. "That," she said, "was a very expensive beaker." "It was in my way," he said, trying for arrogance and landing somewhere around embarrassed raccoon in a suit. "You were holding it." "I was merely attempting to assist." She crouched to clean up the mess, mumbling something about lab safety, while Ronnie leaned against the doorframe with a smirk so sharp it could cut glass. "Your boyfriend's a menace." "He's not my—" "Yet," Darius interjected with an arch of his brow and a flash of his not quite sparkly smile. Mira didn't dignify him with a response, but Ronnie raised both eyebrows as if to say, "Really?" and wandered off, muttering something about ordering more glassware. At Taylor's apartment again, Darius sat cross-legged on the floor while Taylor applied eyeliner with impressive precision and told him all about his plan to pitch a vampire-themed podcast to the Haunted Yourself Network. "You could guest star," Taylor said, squinting one eye. "You know, once you're undead again." I'm not certain I'll ever be undead again, Darius said glumly, cradling a cup of warm Irish breakfast tea like it held answers to the universe. He thought about Mira far too often. Her sarcasm, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about genetically modified root vegetables, how she looked when she was trying not to laugh like she was losing a very dignified war. He liked that war. At the lab the next day, he knocked over another tray of samples and cursed under his breath in Gaelic. Mira turned, surprised. "You speak Gaelic?" "I was born in Ireland." Mira blanked. "Huh." She sounded surprised. Darius shrugged. It was a really long time ago. And then as she rolled her eyes and returned to labeling a slide, he found himself watching her. Not in the bloodlust way, not even in the lust way, but in that aggravating, disarming way he used to watch sunrises. He didn't realize he was smiling until Mira turned and caught him. "What?" "You have..." He hesitated, floundered, then landed gracelessly on an ink smudge on your cheek. She narrowed her eyes, wiped her face, and checked her fingers. "There's nothing there." Darius, smooth as shattered toast, said, "Then I suppose your skin is just that radiant." There was a pause. A beat too long. Then Mira laughed. An actual laugh, not a snort or scoff or sigh, a real laugh as if something inside her cracked open for just a moment. Darius stared at her like she'd just burst into flame, which, given his experience, would have been less alarming than this feeling in his chest. That night, Darius lay awake on Taylor's sagging sofa, while Bastian, his owl familiar, still refusing to speak to him, eyed him balefully from the coat rack. "What?" Darius asked. Bastian fluffed his feathers and gave a long, slow blink that somehow screamed, "You're in love, you idiot!" "I most certainly am not," Darius said aloud. But Bastian only turned around, tail feathers flouncing in judgment. And in the quiet of that tiny, cluttered apartment, surrounded by mortal mess and microwave ramen, Darius had to admit, human life was very hard. And Mira was going to make it impossible. Darius was halfway through a greasy spring roll when the wall of Taylor's apartment shimmered. Not in a metaphorical, poetic way, but in the very literal, arcane kind of shimmer that meant someone had just opened a government-authorized Loomway portal. Taylor froze, with a pair of chopsticks in midair, one eyebrow climbing his forehead. Dude," Darius groaned, already bracing himself. With a whoosh and the scent of sandalwood and old lavender, Aunt Araminta swept into the room like a one-woman storm system. Her heels clicked furiously across the hardwood floor, one hand lifting her floor-length forest green cloak as she made a beeline for him. "Darius Kelsey, what in the name of the sacred blood moon have you done to yourself?" He barely had time to shove the carton of fried rice away before he was engulfed in perfumed air, heavy rings, and a very dramatic furrowed brow. "I'm fine," Darius said, trying to peel her off. "Not dead, not undead, just incredibly average and alarmingly mortal." She pulled back just enough to look him over, both hands gripping his face like he was some fragile heirloom she'd just discovered had been used as a doorstop. "You're warm, sweaty. I don't like it. And your skin, are you flushing?" I walked up 2 flights of stairs. Apparently, humans do that now. For cardio. Taylor's head jerked between them, blinking fast. "Wait, hold up. You're his aunt, and a vampire, which means he's actually, you're not just, oh my god, you're real." Darius gave him a flat look. Was that still in question? Taylor dropped his chopsticks. "I thought you were, committed. I figured it was a whole branding thing, dark nightlife influencer with delusions of Dracula, not actual bloodline vampire nobility." Can we not unpack my entire identity at dinner? Darius said wearily, reaching for his drink, which was now lukewarm orange soda because mortal digestion was stupid. A tinkling chime drifted into the room, and a second shimmer rolled across the air. This time, the portal opened gently, like a curtain parting at the opera, and a godmother stepped through in a lilac and moonlight gossamer ball gown, her floating teacup hovering dutifully near her left shoulder. Her dark hair was pinned up with glimmering quartz combs, and in one hand she clutched a pink crystal tablet, the screen scrolling with a glowing script in languages Darius couldn't begin to decipher. She looked exhausted. She introduced herself as Godmother Kona. "Oh, stars above, he is pink-cheeked," she said faintly, regarding Darius as if someone had swapped out her prized unicorn for a taxidermied pigeon. "I told you," Araminta huffed. "His familiar, Sebastian, came back from their short visit talking nonsense and saying my poor Darius was leaking plasma like a sunburned mortal. Mortal! What next? A subscription to an oat milk service?" "Hey," Darius interjected, lifting a finger. "I happen to like oat milk now. It's earthy." Kona let out a sigh that made her teacup shiver. "We don't have time for this. The loomway's been twitchy. I had to forge 2 authorizations just to divert the trace on this location. There's chatter about you, Darius." Taylor slowly turned toward Darius, eyes wide. "So you actually made the bureaucrats nervous?" "It's more of a mild curiosity right now. I'm not a danger. I'm embarrassingly harmless. Ask the daisies I sneezed on this morning, which burst into tiny specks of pollen because you breathed on them wrong," Taylor muttered. "I saw that. And I heard about the beaker incident, and the waffle iron, and the burnt toast. Did you scry on me?" "My boyfriend monitors risk and keeps me informed, especially when they get demoted from apex predator to glorified meat balloon." "That's what I said," Araminta chirped. Darius sank onto the couch and groaned into his hands. "This is a nightmare. An actual fever dream. I'm surrounded by flower nerds, government witches, and one overeager fanboy." "Excuse me," Taylor said, pointing dramatically with a soy sauce packet. "I am a historian of vampire cultural traditions." "You're wearing a Team Nosferatu hoodie. It's vintage. Children, focus." Everyone fell silent. The weight of Kona's tone dropped like a lead paperweight. Her eyes scanned the room, flicking from the leftover takeout to Darius's still red ears to the half-glued "Suck It Sunlight" poster on Taylor's wall. Then she said softly, "You can't go home." Araminta straightened. "But surely if we reach the Dublin Circle, the family can—" "No," Kona interrupted, voice tighter now. "The Knoxvale Vampire Court is listening. So are others. There are rumors already forming. The Fae have taken notice. The moment we move him into vampire space, it will escalate. If we're lucky, they'll want to study him. If we're not—" She didn't finish. Araminta's shoulders slumped. "So what do we do?" Kona's crystal tablet pulsed once. "We wait, watch, and pray that the blood magic residue left behind will help us fix this." Taylor, still visibly overwhelmed, raised a hand like a student. "So, like, are there vampire schools or something? And are we in danger of being unzipped from reality if we ask the wrong questions?" Kona gave him a surprisingly kind smile. "You're not in danger. Yet. But I'd reconsider Googling how to summon bloodthirsty ghosts. The Loomway doesn't like amateurs." Taylor gulped. "Noted." Darius looked between them, his anxious aunt, the slightly manic fanboy, the poised godmother with the glowing tea, and exhaled. Slowly. And despite the chaos, despite the looming danger, despite the fact that he'd burned himself twice this week trying to microwave soup, his thoughts flickered. annoyingly and persistently, to Mira. Her laugh, her eyebrows when she was suspicious, the sharp glint in her gaze when she was trying not to smile. Blood Mother, he was in trouble. The leftover scent of roasted garlic and burnt butter still hung in Mira's apartment, no matter how many windows she cracked. She wasn't exactly proud of her attempt at dinner. How was it even possible to undercook ravioli and burn the sauce? But Darius hadn't said a word about it. He was seated on the edge of her couch now, thumbing through a thick sheaf of paperwork, his long fingers fidgeting with a corner of a page like he wasn't really reading. Mira leaned in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, arms crossed, watching him in the soft gold lamplight. He looked off. Still beautiful, damn him, even without vampire glamour, but not quite as polished. His cheekbones had lost their absurd supernatural sharpness, his complexion now a shade deeper than artfully undead, and more desk job with a vitamin D deficiency. There was a line between his brows as he stared at the documents. His tie was askew, his hair mussed. He hadn't said much since she'd invited him to dinner, a spontaneous, stupid decision made in the hallway outside the lab. She'd said it to be kind. She'd meant it mostly. But now, standing here watching him in her lived-in space, in her soft lighting, Mira realized her thoughts had completely unraveled. "Why are you so quiet?" she asked finally. Darius looked up, blinking slowly. "Sorry," he said, and that alone was startling. He never apologized. "I was trying to make sense of this loom-way fine print. It's written in legalese and dragonese." Mira gave a faint huff of laughter and walked over, sitting down beside him. Not too close, but not far either. She stared at him sidelong. "Okay, I have to ask. Vampires, magic, other realms, that's all real, isn't it?" Darius didn't answer right away. He looked at her, the guarded expression softening. "You really want the answer?" she said. "I already know it. I've known it since the night we met. I just didn't want to believe it myself." Silence stretched. Darius leaned back, the papers slipping from his lap in a gentle flutter, ignored. Mira continued. "I've spent so much of my life trying to make the world make sense. Science was my structure, my armor. You are not structure. You're chaos in really nice boots." He smiled crookedly, the first real one of the evening. She watched him, heartbeat ticking like a metronome behind her ribs. "And somehow I don't hate it." "Goddess Mira, do you know how hard it is not to kiss you right now?" She opened her mouth, then shut it. Her stomach did a weird tumble. Darius leaned forward slightly, just slightly, and there it was again, that strange shift in the air, like something magnetic. Mira thought she imagined it until his hand reached for hers. But he hesitated, paused, fingers hovering. "I'm scared," he said, barely a whisper. "I don't even know how to be human anymore. I've forgotten how things feel when they don't heal in 5 seconds. I didn't know how to toast bread without setting it on fire. I'm exhausted, and I'm falling apart, and it's humiliating." There was no bravado in him now, no teasing grin, just him, vulnerable and unsure, looking at her like he didn't expect comfort, but maybe couldn't help hoping for it anyway. She reached up and touched his cheek, softly. His breath hitched. "I'm scared too. Not because of a magic, because I like you, and I didn't mean to." It happened so fast. His hand touched her hair, and then their lips met. It wasn't the electric jolt Mira expected. It was slow and warm and clumsy, honest. She leaned into it, one hand resting on his chest, feeling the heartbeat that hadn't always been there. And then, knock, knock, knock. They jumped apart like teenagers caught sneaking out. Mira stared toward the door, her pulse still racing. Darius groaned. Mira opened the door to find Mr. Hal, her elderly neighbor, standing with his usual crocheted cap and cat-patterned sweater. "Sorry to bother, Mira," he said, eyes suspiciously flicking toward the half-visible Darius behind her. "Just thought you ought to know, there's a strange woman lurking around the building. Pale, old-fashioned clothes. Long green cloak, looked like something out of a Celtic horror movie." Mira blinked. Darius swore, loudly. Mr. Hal raised an eyebrow. "That's my aunt," Darius muttered. "Of course she's here. Of course she's here." "Your aunt?" "Yes," Darius said flatly. "Dramatic, magical, inconvenient. Just give her a minute, she'll find the door." Mr. Hal didn't look reassured. He said her name was Araminta. Darius turned and thumped his forehead gently against the wall. "That woman has a gift for chaos." Once Mr. Hal was gone and they both slipped outside, Mira zipped her coat and nudged Darius. "You want to tell me now about the last time you saw her?" Darius sighed. "She portaled into Taylor's apartment, mid-dinner. Nearly gave him a coronary. She brought a godmother with her. Looked like someone airlifted from a glitter-themed gala. Floating teacup, sparkly tablet, the works." Mira blinked. "Oh, what now?" "They're part of the Loomway," Darius said, scrubbing a hand over his face. "And apparently they've noticed me. Us. This." He gestured vaguely between them. "And I don't want to put you in danger, Mira. The Loomway pays attention to patterns, magic's ripple effects. They're watching." She stared at him in the dim parking lot light. "Are you saying this is a ripple?" He looked at her, something in his eyes unguarded. "No. I'm saying you're the reason I haven't drowned." And for a moment, Mira didn't care how insane it all was. Vampires, portals, Loomway agents. Because in the center of the whirlwind, Darius was just a man trying to hold on. And she was already reaching back. The air had cooled since dinner. That peculiar hush had settled over the apartment complex, the kind that made porch lights feel too yellow and hedges too still. Crickets chirped like they hadn't a care in the world. He, on the other hand, had about 23, ranging from, "Why did I almost kiss her?" to, "Please let my aunt not be hiding in the bushes." Mira wrapped her cardigan tighter. "I'm still not convinced this isn't all an elaborate breakdown I'm having," she muttered. "Trust me," Darius said, glancing toward the parking lot. "If this is a breakdown, it's a very well-funded one. Araminta doesn't do subtle. She's the one with the cloak? Velvet, forest green, hooded. Looks like a hedge witch who drank too much gothic dream potion." They turned a corner and stopped. There, silhouetted in the dim garden lighting and standing perfectly still between two hedges, like some spectral Renaissance woman, was Araminta. She wore her signature cloak, long green and embroidered with tiny glinting threads like frost, and her pale hands clutched a lace handbag as though it contained secret knives. "Darius!" she called softly, her voice both relieved and scolding. "You've gone and hidden yourself in a shoebox neighborhood." "Auntie," Darius said, stepping forward. He gestured back at Mira. "Mira, meet my Aunt Araminta. Auntie, meet my, Mira." He stumbled halfway through the sentence. "My Mira." His brain crashed against the rocks of implication, and he immediately wanted to launch himself into the nearest shrub. Mira blinked. He felt her eyes flick toward him and away again, biting back a smirk. "Your Mira," Araminta repeated. Her voice was mild, but loaded with question. "I mean, not mine, as in ownership. This isn't the 1700s. She's a very independent, fully self-governing citizen with a PhD." Mira folded her arms. "He also burns toast and sneezes when he gets too close to lilies." Araminta's gaze softened with fond amusement. "Oh, good. He needs someone who can mock him." "Wait, needs someone?" Darius muttered. Curse this mortal form. His face was hot and flushed now. But her expression changed in an instant. The lines at her mouth sharpened and she leaned closer. I came because there are whispers. Darius stilled. What kind? Court kinds. Dangerous kinds. There's unrest in the veiled corridors. And they know, Darius. Something's changed. They're speculating on your condition. He swallowed. They suspect? Not specifics, she said, but that Lord Veyric is stirring up gossip, and you know what happens when he stirs. The temperature seemed to drop. Even Mira straightened. Just as Araminta spoke the name, a portal opened and a new presence slithered into the garden path behind them. He didn't need to look to know who it was. The scent hit first. Cloves, wine, and polished leather. Then came the voice. Ah, Duke Shalal, and Miss Mira at last. I've heard so much of you, it's a relief to see you're real and not just myth. They turned. Lord Veyric emerged like he'd been waiting in a perfume ad. His cloak, definitely Gucci, and probably cursed, shimmered with black on black embroidery. His pale blonde hair was pulled into a flawless knot, and his lips curled as if he were tasting everyone's emotions like hors d'oeuvres. Mira stared. Oh no, it's Dracula in a Gucci cloak. He winced. Please don't provoke him. I provoke everyone, she whispered back. Lord Veyric stepped closer, and Darius instinctively moved a bit in front of Mira. The vampire's eyes flicked to the motion and smiled wider. She's lovely, he said. You have excellent taste, cousin. We're not cousins, Darius snapped. We shared a mentor once. It's practically family. Lord Veyric turned to Mira with a small bow. You must understand the fuss. Darius vanished quite suddenly, and no one else could reach him. And then, such tragic news of his condition. Then you appeared. A storm of speculation about a mortal woman who somehow altered the very rules of our nature. Fascinating. I don't suppose you'd care to... Nope, Mira interrupted. I hadn't even made the offer yet. And I already hate it. Araminta's voice came next, so quietly cold that even the insects stopped chirping. Veyric, she said, if you're here to flirt, I suggest a mirror. The air thickened. Veyric's charm didn't falter, but the gleam in his eye turned sharp. I'm here to observe, nothing more. You're here to stake a claim, but Darius is not a pawn, and Mira, she added, turning to the woman now watching everything with laser focus, is not a prize. Darius tried to breathe, but the moment was pressing too tightly around them. They suspect, if they confirm, if they connect the change to her blood... Lord Veyric inclined his head, the picture of civility, but his words curled like smoke. The court will decide, and if what he took belongs to all, and well, the law provides for such things. He turned, as if he hadn't dropped an emotional grenade into the garden, and strolled off into the dark. For a few moments, no one spoke. Then, Mira said, was that a vampire threat? Because I think he just tried to annex me. He thinks I stole you. Mira blinked. Wait, what? Did you? No, I found you by accident. You were just there. And then I was there, and then here we are. She watched him carefully. And you didn't tell them about me? His throat was dry. No, because if they knew what you might be, they'd never stop. Not until they figured out how to use that to their advantage, or worse, how to make you theirs. Silence again. only the distant hum of traffic and the soft rustle of leaves. Mira reached out, her fingers brushing his. He held on. Araminta exhaled slowly. We don't have much time. Not anymore. That's it for part 1. What do you think of the story so far? Please let me know in the comments. Part 2 should be out in a couple days. Thanks for listening. Please hit that like button and subscribe for more enchanted chaos.